Hi, my name is Wes and I'm with Mila. Today I'm here at ECS Tuning and we'll be changing the transmission oil on this ZF 8HP that is in this BMW G20 that's behind me. Everything that will be shown in the video today you'll be able to find in the description below. Now the Mila kit comes with everything you will need to properly do the job. The ZF 8HP has an integrated oil filter with the oil pan. The Mila kit has upgraded filter media. It also has high quality, made in Germany oil, along with an electrical connector socket and all of the hardware that you will need to properly do the job. The only tools that you will need for this job is a torque wrench, ratchets, extensions, a couple of small prying tools, an 8mm socket, 10mm socket, an E10, a T40, an 8mm Allen, a 10mm Allen, and also you will need a filling device. Now on this BMW, it's got a lot of cool upgrades, including these Turner Motorsports skid plates. Now we will have to remove those before we can get to this middle skid plate in order to gain access to our transmission. Next, we will need to remove these brackets. They're held on by 10mm bolts. Now, a professional tip is to remove the fill plug before you start draining the oil. That way we can ensure that we can get oil back into the transmission itself. Now, you'll also notice on the side of the pan, there's a sticker that says lifetime fill, but like any fluid that's in a transmission, it needs to be serviced. Mila suggests about every 50,000 miles. Now, in order to do this at home, you may not have the special tool to get that fill plug out. So the way we're gonna do it is we're gonna show you how to take off the transmission cross member. And so now we have the transmission cross member supported. We're gonna take out these bolts and then slowly lower the rear of the transmission. Now that we've made ourselves some room, use an 8mm Allen to break loose that fill plug. Now, once you take it loose, oil will come out, so be careful. There we go. And now, time to drain the pan. While the oil finishes draining, we can go ahead and start loosening up our bolts. Now, one thing that I like to do is to leave the corner bolts for last and the bolts that are furthest away from the drain plug for very last. That way we can ensure that all of our oil is going towards the drain plug. This is the accumulator for the start-stop. Whenever you come to a stop, it is already filled up with oil. Take your foot off the brake. It is spring-loaded. A solenoid will release that spring, pushing the fluid back into the transmission so that you can get moving again quickly. Now, in order to replace the connector socket, we're going to have to take down this accumulator. It's pretty easy. Just pry out the connector on one side. You've got a bolt on the other, and it comes right down. Then we will have access to release the clip to remove the connector socket. All right, we've removed the 3 bolts. Now we'll take this down. Now it's hard to see, but in order to get to that connector socket, it is on the rear passenger side of the vehicle. It's got a little tab that you will rotate counterclockwise and it will release the connector, and then you are able to pull the connector out. Now, in order to release the connector, we will need to remove this one bolt here and pull down on the clip. Now it's released. Now the connector socket is really tied up in there, so it's hard to show you taking it out and putting the new one back in. But a couple of things to keep in mind is that it needs to be clocked properly. There is a locating tab on the inside of this. And also what I like to do is add a little bit of oil around these O-rings to help them slide in just a little bit better. Take your time and you will get it done. Just be patient. Now that I've replaced the bolt that holds the clip for the connector socket, I'll torque it down to 8 Newton meters. Also, I will replace the accumulator for the start-stop and torque each one of those 3 bolts to 8 Newton meters. Now, before we install the new oil pan, we'll want to make sure that the rail along the bottom of the transmission is as dry as we can make it. And also, we will want to lubricate this O-ring that's inside of the oil pan just a little bit so that it seats properly. Now that we're installing the pan, we're going to torque it down in the proper order to 10 Newton meters. So first, with the engine off, we are going to add transmission fluid to the transmission. We want to try to have it as level as possible because we want to try to get as much fluid into the transmission as we can before we start it up. So how we're going to do this is we are going to go ahead and attach a couple bolts to the transmission cross member to hold it into place. Then we're going to get inside of the car, start it up so it can get up to temperature. Once it gets up to temperature between 30 and 50 degrees Celsius, then we will lift the car back up and check the fluid level with it running. Now, while it's running, the fluid is working its way through all of the internal components of the transmission. Once you turn the ignition off and the transmission stops turning, the torque converter stops turning and all that, the oil will settle at the bottom of the pan and your excess oil will come out. We don't want that. We want to make sure that it is filled properly with it running. With the transmission up to temperature, we ran through the gears to make sure that the transmission was properly filled internally, and we also checked the level again with it running. The oil dripping out, tighten the fill plug back up to 35 Newton meters. After we take it on another test drive and check the oil level one more time, we will put the underpan back on and we will be finished. As you can see, this job's not all that difficult, but like anything else on a car, take your time and pay attention to details. Everything that we used will be listed in the description below. Like, comment, and subscribe for more enthusiast content.